Hey there, class. Mr. Prusky here. Hope you're having a good day so far. We're continuing with Chapter 4. This is Section 4.6. The name of the lesson is Use Congruent Triangles. Our essential question is, how can we use congruent triangles to prove angles or sides are congruent? So we've been doing some proofs throughout the chapter to prove triangles are congruent. And essentially, we're going like a step further, okay? So we're not trying to prove that just the triangles are congruent. We're trying to prove that, like, after we prove the triangles are congruent, then we can assume that the corresponding or matching parts of the triangles are congruent. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but it's basically proofs with like one extra step. Okay. All right. So let's get into it here. So we have CPCTC. This is an acronym, and the acronym stands for corresponding parts. Of congruent triangles are congruent. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, or CPCTC. Okay? So that's basically this. After we do like side, 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 or side, angle, side, that stuff, that's like the next step, usually the last step of a proof. Okay? All right, so we don't have a warm-up here, but it says, if we know that triangle ACB is congruent to triangle ECD, what could you conclude? So I want you to list the sides and angles that are going to be congruent here, okay? List the sides and angles that are going to be congruent, and we're going to call this angle 1 and this angle 2 right here, okay? I want you to pause the video and see what would match here. Go ahead. All right, so if we go ahead and list the angles here, I would say that angle A is going to match with angle E. So we have angle A and angle E. We'll use the one arc for that. Then we have, let's see here, angle B, 2 arcs, and angle D. Angle B is congruent to angle D. And we also have angle 1. It's congruent to angle 2. And that is all the angles. Now, which sides are going to match here? Well, looks like we have AC. AC should match with EC. Okay, so AC and EC. And remember, the congruence statement up here is really helpful to figure out what matches here, okay? We have AC and EC. We have CB and DC. Or no, CD, that is. CB and CD. CD. And then we have AB and ED. Oops. Congruent to ED. Okay, and so basically if we can prove the triangles are congruent, then we can also assume that all those different parts are also going to be congruent, okay? So corresponding parts, like A corresponds with E, something like that. Basically they're matching, okay? What justifies these conclusions? CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right, we got a few proofs to do today, so stick with me. It's like 4 proofs, a lot of proofs, but this will be a really good practice for us. This is hard for a lot of people, so make sure you pause the video if you need to, bring some questions to class, and let's get into this here. So, up on the top here we have statement and reason. All right, it says given AB is congruent to CB and measure of angle ABD is congruent or is equal to measure of angle CBD. What do we always start with? We start with our given. So one thing I want to mention here, we're not proving the triangles are congruent. We're proving this down here, that AD equals CD. So you'll see how we do that in a second here, okay? So step 1, we're going to do our givens. AB is congruent to CB. And then also measure of angle AB. I'm just going to write congruent, actually. I don't like this part here. The measure doesn't really matter. It's angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. The reason for that is given. Okay, so now I'm going to mark what we know here. We know AB and CB are congruent. We also know ABD is this angle and CBD is this angle are congruent. Okay, what comes next after givens usually? Usually it's definitions. Do we have any definitions in the givens? We do not. Nothing like midpoint or angle bisector. So then we got to do reflexive or vertical angles. Are there any reflexive sides or vertical angles here? There is. We got BD is congruent to BD in the middle here. So, oops, that's not what I want. So 2 is going to be side BD is congruent to itself because of the reflexive property. Okay, so now do we have enough information to prove the triangles are congruent? Well, let's go around the triangle and see what we have here. If we go, start here, we have a side, angle, side, it looks like. Is that a congruence postulate that we know? It is. So now we can go ahead for step 3, and we can say triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. And the reason for that is side, angle, side, because the angles between the two congruent sides. And then now we know the triangles are congruent. Now the last step, which we haven't done before, is now we can say that what we're trying to prove here, that AD is congruent to CD because of CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So we can say this right here is congruent to this because those are matching parts of congruent triangles. Okay, if they're matching parts of congruent triangles, they're obviously going to be congruent. Okay, all right, let's do another one here. Actually, this is checkpoint 1. Why don't you see if we can try this one on your own? See how you do. Okay, let's go through this here. So we have some givens here. We'll start with our givens. So we have MR is congruent to PR, and we have MO is congruent to PO. The reason for that is given. Any definitions here? No. Let's actually mark what we have here. We have MR and PR, and we have MO and PO. All right, so no definitions. Do we have any reflexive or vertical angles? We do. We have our shared side in the middle here. So we can say that RO is congruent to RO. The reason for that is reflexive property. Okay. Now, what do we have here? If we go around the triangle, what do we have? We have side, side, side. Is that a congruence postulate? It is. So we can say that triangle MRO is congruent to triangle. So we kind of went this direction, so we have to go the same direction on the other side. It's kind of a mirror image. Triangle PRO. And the reason for that is we had side, side, side was a congruence postulate. And then step 4, now we're trying to prove that angle M is congruent to angle P. Well, why can we do that? Well, we can say that those are congruent because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. The triangles are congruent, then their matching parts are also congruent. So we can say that because of CPCTC. Awesome. All right, let's keep moving along here. Let's see. This example is a little fussy. I don't like this one. I don't like this one that much. Yeah, I don't like this one. We're going to skip example 2. And you guys have had enough proofs. We're just going to do one more proof and we'll call it a day. All right, so checkpoint 2, write a 2-column proof. We have given, it actually should be B is congruent to angle D, so make sure you fix that. And C is the midpoint of segment AE. All right, so what do we start with? Start with our given. So angle B is congruent to angle D, and C is the midpoint of AE. Reason for that is given. All right, what comes next? We haven't done much of this, but is there any definitions? We do have a definition. What does the definition mean? So we know that B is congruent to D, and we also know that C is the midpoint of AE. So if C is the midpoint of AE, what does that mean? Well, that means that AC is congruent to EC. And the reason for that is definition of midpoint. Now we can mark that. These are, actually use one tick mark. This is congruent to this. Okay, sounds good. Now, after definitions, we have either reflexive sides or vertical angles, or then your reflexive sides or vertical angles. There are. I'm going to put a 1 and a 2 here, so label these, make it easier. So we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And why is that? Well, those are vertical angles. Okay. And then I'm going to mark with, we'll do 2 arcs. Yeah, that's not very good. Let's do 2 arcs, 2 arcs. Okay. All right, what's next? Do we have enough information? Let's go around the triangle here. We started at B. We have angle, angle, side. Is that one we know? It is. So for step 4, now we can say the triangles are congruent. I'm going to say triangle ABC is congruent to, so we kind of went down this way and back that way. So I'm going to start at D, DEC, or no, EDC. So EDC? Yeah, EDC. Triangle EDC, that's going to be, we said angle, angle, side. And now we're trying to prove that some parts of the triangle are congruent. We can say that AB is congruent to ED, or CD, sorry. What's happening here? Something's weird. C actually should be, not C, it should be, let's see here. AB is congruent to, it should be ED, I believe. Okay? So we can say that AB is congruent to ED, and the reason for that is CPCTC. Sorry, I kind of figured this out in real time. There could be something goofy with the problem here, but it should be proven that this is congruent to this. So it should be AB and ED, I believe. But if I'm wrong, I'll make sure to correct me, and we'll get it figured out here. All right, and that is it for today. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and we will talk soon.